I'm resident of Collinwood, Joel Saints for YouTube. I'm joined by Don Schmidt and Susie. How are you folks?
Great. Doing good.
Yes. Ready to talk some DS.
We're here to discuss the wedding of the century, or the wedding from hell, however you view it, of Barnabas Collins. And I love how Don's shaking his head at me. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. And Angelique Bouchard Collins. Yes, Angelique married Barnabas. It happened in 1968. But for time preference, it happened way back when, in 1795. What did you guys think? Because the reason this happened, there's a lot of reasons this happens, obviously, but the main reason it happens, by this time, Angelique has sabotaged the marriage of Josette and Barnabas. They aren't getting hitched. Jeremiah has married Josette. Barnabas killed Jeremiah in a duel, despite him being the worst shot ever. As we're going to come to learn later. And Angelique causes Sarah Collins to have pains. And she says, "Oh, if I can cure Sarah, will you marry me?" And Barnabas is like, "Yeah." And true to his word, as soon as Angelique cures his sister, he marries her. What did you guys think of this?
Go ahead, Susie.
Okay. What did I think of it? I thought that, she was pretty desperate. So I guess if you're that desperate, if you have that type of power, why not? I also thought it was very, very evil, because instead of, I don't know, just kind of doing it to him, like, why did she have to go after, such an innocent little girl? It was just cold. It really was. And cold and desperate and evil and just pretty effed up.
Yes, it was. What did you think, Don?
I'm going to go back, and I have maybe mentioned this quote on your podcast before, but Laura Parker really kind of summed it up. She said that Angelique doesn't even realize that her hate is destroying her.
Yeah.
And this is really the beginning of her, and the end of her in this phase. And like, really, you have to bring in a little innocent girl who did nothing to you? Is it really that bad? And you're kind of thinking along in the storyline, well, maybe it can get fixed, but once this wedding is announced and is going to take place, you kind of feel like things are really accelerating to a dark place. You're now beyond the point of no return, and now it's just going to be doom and gloom in the worst possible ways. That's what it felt like to me.
Angelique, before we actually meet the lovely Laura Parker as Angelique, we hear Angelique before 1795 starts. There's a sequence where Dr. Julie Hoffman is in a mausoleum. She hears a woman crying, and then she hears a wicked woman laughing. Now, I'm going to protest this. The laugh you hear is not the legendary Angelique laugh. It is not Laura Parker who does the laugh, is what I'll say, because I don't think she was cast yet. But it is. I do believe this is our hint that there is a witch. Like, wait, there's a wicked woman laughing. Oh my God. What did you guys think of? Because Angelique comes to the conclusion of, Barnabas, she hears about this big duel between him and Jeremiah, and she's got this worried look on her face, like, oh crap, he can't shoot. I'm so screwed. And she has this medallion that she gives him. Like, here, you wear this. It'll give you good luck, because she knows he's doomed. He's really doomed. And she realizes how bad she's effed up right here. Like, oh God, what did I do? It's a really great sell job by Laura Parker. Her facial reactions. What did you think?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Susie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess up until that point, I thought, okay, well, like I said before, she's desperate, and I kind of get the feeling that she was probably never rejected before in her life. I mean, not just the magic or whatever, the witchcraft, but also, you know, her beauty, and you know, she's uninhibited, you know, especially for like that time. Um, and so when all of this stuff started going on, it's like it's almost as if, well, you know, she's lost control. And, you know, unlike Nicholas Blair, who I mentioned in the last video, was always kind of like the thinker and always a few moves ahead. I think that she did not think this through at all. And so, yeah, she had every right to be concerned because it just wasn't going quite as planned by her.
Yeah. Don?
Well, I think Susie has a good point. You know, Angelique is usually, you know, the smooth operator, and she starts getting when she starts getting really full of herself, and she doesn't anticipate 5 or 6 the different scenarios, and she always has to be in control. And when something happens that is out of her control, I would say 19 times out of 20, she is really able to just think on her feet. And she's I mean, she would have made a great salesperson because she can just think on her feet and I'm going to do this. And like you were saying with the medallion, take this, Barnabas, you know, I want you to have, so she gets desperate. And most of the time that works. And this is one of those times, but the situation was was outgrown. It was becoming bigger than she was, which she's going to find out really quick. It's just one disaster after another.
Yeah, you're right. She really, because magic is sort of her last resort for everything. With everything you see in 1795. Oh, this ain't going well. Well, I'll turn Joshua into a cat. Right? I mean, I gotta get both of your thoughts about that, Susie.
Okay. I thought that was great. I really did. It was very unexpected. I think that might have been, if I remember correctly, that might have been the first time that in effect, you know, like that happened on the show. And I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was great. I mean, wasn't there a scene, Jewel, where wasn't it Ben and Angelique were doing the thing with the clay, and they were just both cracking up and laughing because she was making the clay figure, and it was just like that whole evil, and I kind of wanted to laugh, and then I thought, no, this is terrible, but it was kind of you hated. I mean, you hated Joshua so much that you kind of was glad he was turned into cat. But I don't mean to speed ahead, but wasn't it the scene in in Vicky's bedroom where Abigail was in there and he turned back into Joshua and she starts, oh man, I laugh. I how great is Clarice Blackburn? I don't mean to skip ahead, but I had to.
Yeah.
That was great.
The cat's laying there on the bed like no big deal. Like, I'm just gonna relax her like most cats would, like not give a shit. And you see this puff, you hear, and then you see a puff of, you hear this poof, and there's this big puff of smoke, and there's Joshua, like no big deal. Like, you know, we went from a cat that was completely lazy to a character who was a complete prick to return in every way. Like, Ben Stokes is right. When they're out in the woods, like, and she's plotting this whole cat thing, he's like, how about you make him into a jackass? I could bring him out into the woods and me and that jackass would have some fun. I'm like, I'm with Ben on this one. And Angelique's like, Ben? Like,
yeah. The look on Laura Parker's face is going, Ben? like, I make the decision, but what are you thinking? And it's like, that was a great scene, Jewel. I love that.
like, what do you mean, Ben? What do you mean, Ben? Lady, you're not the one getting whipped across the back here. Like, what do you mean? Like, you got powers. You could pull this off with no problem. And then she turns into a cat.
I know, it's like Laura Parker's about ready to say, hey, slow down there, Sparky.
I'm waiting. She's so shocked.
Yeah.
Like, she's not even like I think both Laura Parker, like Laura was like, her reaction is great, but I think she's shocked by the line because Angelique, I'm waiting for her to put her hand up like to silence him. No, she's like, and like shocked at him. I'm like, why are you shocked at him? He's getting beat like a government mule here.
Yeah, he's the indentured de facto indentured servant. I mean,
like the cat is priceless because, I mean, scale 1 to 10, how mean is Joshua? Susie?
Well, he's mean. I would say at about a maybe 8 or 9. I wouldn't give him a full 10. Just because he does, he does care. So yeah, about an 8 or 9 of mean.
Don?
yeah, same. I was thinking that same scale, 8 or 9. We can't go all the way because he does have some redeeming qualities later on, and even in the worst of times, I still think he loved Naomi.
Yeah, I did too. I think, man, their love story needs to be told.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes, definitely.
that would be really cool because I think there's more to it than what we hear. And really, Joshua is a master planner. He, as much as we want to point the finger at Angelique for a lot of things, I got to point at Joshua a bit, not for the failure of the marriage, but he looks at the business arrangement he has made between Josette's family and his family. Oh, my son will marry your daughter. Will be this one big business. This is a business. Like Patrick and Gordon have said, this is a business transaction for Joshua. This is all about Joshua. He doesn't give a shit about Barnabas's happiness here. Naomi does, but Joshua, no. And that's you're sort of like, man, this guy's not nice. And then all the while, as he's looking at Josette and Barnabas, says, well, you know what? This marriage is going to happen. It's in the bag. And what's he do? He looks right at his brother Jeremiah. You need to marry Millicent. Like, the fuck? Like, are you high? Like, and he's like, and then Jeremiah's like, no. I love Anthony George's Jeremiah. He's like, no, I'm not marrying Millicent. Because you get the sense that Jeremiah wants nothing to do with any marriage. What did you think of that?
Susie?
Yeah, I agree with you. It did seem to me, I mean, I know that he didn't want anything like that, but he definitely had a soft spot for Victoria. I could tell that there was like a chemistry there when he would have like a alone time with her. But yeah, definitely not Millicent. No.
Well, the whole thing, it was really interesting because all these marriages were strategic, and it really reminded me like he was a wannabe Habsburg trying to marry off his sons and daughters to be strategic in working a big power play through Europe. I mean, that's what he thought. I mean, God knows who he wanted to eventually marry Sarah off to. But it was all about consolidating money and power, probably in New England. And he told Jeremiah about the land holdings that Millicent and what was her brother's name? Not James.
Daniel.
That they had significant real estate holdings in New York. So he was already thinking, oh, I could get a corner on maybe shipping or shipbuilding in New York, and then we're going to make this power play in New England. I mean, he probably had these grandiose visions of being the player of up and down the eastern seaboard, and that's where he was thinking. It wasn't about love and what they wanted. It was about what he wanted and his power, and he's just a little too full of himself.
Yeah, and it wasn't even about I mean, love is, yeah, definitely not, but not even like, because I don't think that he liked any of them. I know that there was a scene where he kind of what did he tell Naomi, like, when they came, and he said, oh, she, talking about Natalie, like, she still refers to herself as a countess, and he's like, this is just so ridiculous, these people. And then when she talked about New York, he's like, you don't like visiting New York? And she's like, no, I don't like the people or something. And he's like, I love New York. And you could tell he didn't like them at all.
Yeah, he's all about the money and the business.
Yeah.
He's was Naomi's marriage, did she love Joshua? I think, yeah, she did to a degree. But I think, Joshua can be such a prude prick, but he's so good at it. And he doesn't seem to like mind just marrying his son to this girl for money. It feels like there's a lot more things going on with Joshua, whether you believe in the Patrick's Leviathan theory or not, which is interesting as hell. But with Angelique and Barnabas here, Angelique she has been serving the Dupre family as a servant, obviously, and considering her interactions with Ben Stokes, her servant treatment is better than his. Very. I love David as Ben Stokes here. I love that they got him because it gives you that interaction with Victoria where she thinks he's Matthew Morgan.
Yeah.
They're sort of playing before they send Victoria back, and they're sort of playing the Wizard of Oz. They're sort of playing the Wizard of Oz here too a bit with she mistakes everybody for everybody in the future, which I like. What did you folks think of that, Susie?
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I mean, and I loved him coming back, and just how his acting skills, how scared he was. He reminded me almost a little bit of how kind of Willie was in those episodes with Barnabas, just very frightened. But then also when he was with Angelique, and I don't want to skip too far, but when she was buried or like almost buried alive by the ghost, he was cracking up, and I freaking love that. Oh my gosh, he was so good at that. Just he's definitely I love that they brought him back.
Yeah, the ultimate post-wedding crash, or the ghost of Jeremiah Collins, or Ray, or whatever you want to make him. Don, what did you think of Thayer David's Ben Stokes?
I thought he was terrific. He truly tried, from an acting perspective, he really tried to build a character of that time with his accent and using colloquialisms as much as he could in 1960s American television. When Barnabas would say something and Ben would go, I, that probably was a term that you would have used back then. And totally, I mean, a lot different from Matthew Morgan, obviously. Yeah. And he was, here's a guy that fought the American Revolution, and he got thrown in jail because he was starving after a battle, and he had broke it into a house and was eating a loaf of bread. I mean, really? I mean, it's so counter to you when you think about it. Okay, you're fighting for freedom, and then you got thrown in jail, and it's like you're a de facto indentured servant. And didn't we just fight about it? It's just a really terrific character, and it him being taught to read and write by Barnabas. That kind of he brought out like he was able to bring out this whole side of Barnabas before the curse, and you saw how kind Barnabas was, and how smart Barnabas was, and how a big thinker Barnabas was. So I'm sorry, that was a long answer, but I just love Claire David Ben Stokes. I just thought it was one of the best characters in the 5-year run.
You guys know this take as much time as you need or want, but with when you get into sort of like going back in time and him being arrested for eating a loaf of bread, and like you said, he fought in the Revolutionary War. That's the thing. It was a lot more easier to break the law back in those times than than the times we live in now. They'll depend on who you ask. Here's a great example. Look, Wyatt Earp, the lawman, he was a wanted criminal. I mean, he basically was trying to become a criminal in all ways. The tax collector Bohan in the movie Tombstone, Wyatt Earp wanted to be the tax collector. He was trying to get voted as the sheriff because he was the marshal. He wanted to be the sheriff because the sheriff collected the taxes in Tombstone. And Doc Holliday, who was a notorious outlaw and stuff. Now, there are differences that I won't completely get into because I got into this last night, so I don't want to get off topic. But there's this whole with you have a guy who became a criminal because of a minor incident, and he got made into a servant. That's his jail sentence. Oh, you have to be someone's slave, and that's sometimes how slaves were made. Like, oh, you have to serve this person for your crime. You committed this crime, so you serve them instead of serving jail time. Because really, jail, and probably at the time, jails probably weren't, at the fullest they were probably at full capacity too. Because, instead of just keeping someone in prison or hanging them or just executing, just let them go work it off. Work off their sentence, if you will. So they make them as slaves. And that's our buddy Ben Stokes. And then he runs into a witch who had no idea how pissed Ben was at his master, which that goes to show you, like, there's always, Patrick has talked about a difference in class and lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
That's another great example too of the difference between Ben and Angelique. It's not just about being a man and a woman. Here's Angelique. The most she's had to do is press clothes, clean clothes, hand them out, whatever, do her chores for the Dupre family, and probably not get one beating. Here's Ben, who's been beat by Joshua so many times. He's had enough of it. He's ready to do whatever it takes. And when he hears, I'll turn him into cat. I got a better suggestion right here. He's like, it's no problem. Mention it. But with how sadistic would you rate Angelique? How on a scale of 1 to 10, Susie?
I'm gonna say a 10 for sure. I think I mentioned this in another podcast that we did. I mean, she's one of the most evilest characters of the whole series. I mean, 100%, definitely.
Yeah. Dawn?
I'm gonna, one of the rare times I'm gonna disagree with Susie. I'm gonna put like a 6 or a 7. And the reason why, maybe a 6.5, the reason why I say that, now in this part, at this moment in the show, yes. But when we get to 1968, there's a scene where you really she did something. Do you remember the scene where she turned really old and she wanted that painting back from
Sam Evans?
Sam Evans, and she said something. I have no personal qualms with you. I won't do anything to you. I just want the painting. And it is kind of true. She didn't just go out like randomly get off on just being evil. If you didn't have anything to do with it and you're not in the middle of it, she's just going to leave you alone. Because later on we have frickin' Patofi and Judah Zachary, who just kept getting more and more evil.
Yeah.
And I would say that she was pretty bad, but she knew when to leave well enough alone most of the time. In this part of the series, yeah, she's a 10, but overall in the 5-year run, I'd say she's about a 6.5, 7.
I sort of. Go ahead, Susie.
Oh no, I definitely understand what Dawn is saying, but I'm still gonna stay with it, with her being a 10, because even though you're right, she didn't want to harm anybody. So unless they deserve it. So like with Naomi, for example, she was so grateful for Naomi being how she was. It's so accepting and being kind to her, but yet it's like Sarah is Naomi's daughter. Do you know what I mean? And then also in when she played Cassandra, that there was this, well, you guys already know how I feel about Roger Collins. There's this moment where he, his voice is just so heartbroken, and he's asking her, why me? Why did you choose me? Was it money that you wanted, and all this? And when she was like breaking his heart, and she was just so goddamn ruthless, and she's like, no, I never wanted you. I never loved you. And I'm like, oh, I just wanted to kill her then. I mean, she would, oh God, but I still think she's a nasty 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Joel. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, well, I think Grayson Hall / Julia Hoffman was the only one on the show that could get away with just slapping her. That is still one of my top 5 favorite moments in DS history.
I know, I love that.
Grayson Hall just gets up and she really takes her time, looks at her, and then whack. Sorry.
It's up off the couch. Victoria's sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
Bam. Like, damn. That's like the soap opera moment right there.
Yeah.
That was so awesome. And Victoria's just sitting there so calmly, like,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, Alexander's like, you deserve a lot worse than a smack.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, I sort of wonder with Angelique, because there's times I think she doesn't understand the full force of her power. Though she should, she doesn't. Look, the duel's a great example. The medallion. When she realizes she's effed up and there's no way out of that duel, there's no talking Barnabas out of it. There's damn sure no talking. Jeremiah has to do it by obligation and pride. So now she realizes, man, my boyfriend, my wannabe boyfriend and husband can't shoot. I got to give him this medallion. So she's messed up once. This is her first real sign that things are going to go bad. Pre-marriage. And my mom always said, you'll always see signs of, things are going to go bad before your marriage ever starts. Look for them. This is that sign to Angelique. This is that moment. And so once Jeremiah is shot in the face, she's like, oh, I got away with that one. But she figures, well, now I'll just take Sarah's doll and I'll stab her. She's not going to kill her. She just wants Barnabas to marry her. And once Barnabas gives her word, she cures her, and he keeps the word. He's like, oh, another one. Then comes the wraith of Jeremiah that goes to Jeremiah Collins, like Susie said, buries her ass alive. And it's like, oh my God. And she has to summon Ben Stokes to save her ass. It's so good.
Well, and she's the one that conjured Jeremiah up out of the grave.
Yeah.
And then it just got out of control. And she cured Sarah, But Sarah later on, yeah. Then she Sarah. I can't remember exactly what happens, but Sarah's looking for Barnabas and is out all night and gets pneumonia and gets sick, and it's like, I mean, it's like, girl, what are you? Look what you're doing. It's you. It just keeps spinning out of control. It's way beyond you.
Yeah, to set the scene, what Dawn's talking about is it's after, and we'll get into this after after Barnabas is cursed and dies and rises from his grave, and he's a vampire. He is looking for Josette. He's trying to watch Josette's room, and he's outside, and they've moved into the great house. They by Joshua, Naomi, Sarah, Josette, her aunt. Sorry, I almost called her mother, but it's her aunt. And Sarah looks out her window and sees Barnabas, like you're saying, and she goes out and she goes into the mausoleum, and she gets cold. She gets too cold. She gets sick. She gets pneumonia, if you will, and this is what causes her death. Again, because she loves Barnabas, and that's what Angelique's curse is all about. Anybody you love will die, or anybody who loves you. It's one of the most brutal curses you could put on somebody. Basically, the curse of the vampire, and you'll live forever and watch everybody die around you. Basically, is what it is, and anybody who loves you, and that's what's so cold about it too, and that's where we'll start this with the. Okay, so they get married. Here's the wedding. We'll do the wedding first before we do the tragedy. So we gotta have some happiness, right? It never lasts long on DS. We all know this. So we have the wedding, and I love what Susie said. You brought up a great point that pro- Naomi's wedding gift is the old house. Barnabas has been cut off by Joshua from a money standpoint. So now Barnabas has no job. He has to find a job now. So Naomi feels really bad. What we find out is the old house is actually in Naomi's name, and she gives it to Barnabas and Angelique as a wedding present, which is really nice. It's a way better wedding present than the portrait of Barnabas Collins 1841 parallel time. Okay,
I've watched all the episodes. I know you and Patrick were really talking about that. Yeah,
we're not finished yet on that either. We're still got to get back to that. All those prisoner episodes, but with it's like, who the hell gives like, seriously, that is like just go buy a gift. That's like the gift card gift. Like, okay, here you go. Which I'm guilty of, but okay, I'm gonna burn in hell. I'll punch my ticket later tomorrow. But there's with this, she gives them the house. She gives them the house. They get married. They both say I do. It's like, oh, okay. So Victoria gets busted because Angelique's cast in the spell. Barnabas sort of overhears Angelique. He's like, Angelique, like he was passing her old room, and he questions her like, well, where were you? Well, I was here, and he's like, no, like I don't think so. Like he catches her in a lie. This is very Shadow-esque, by the way, because the real Lamont Cranston catches his servant in a lie because his servant is an agent of the Shadow. So we have a little bit of a nod to the Shadow here. It's subtle. They don't say it is, but they don't say it's a nod to the Shadow, but it in a sense is. And you have this moment where he goes to see Ben Stokes, before he gets turned into a vampire. He's trying to find out who's the witch. And he goes, well, I taught you to write the name, because Ben tells him he can't speak the name. So he puts, and I love how they do the camera work. He puts the V, he goes V for Victoria, because throughout the whole conversation, Jonathan Frid does a great job of mentioning Victoria's witch, and Ben's going, no. He's saying no to the fact that it's Victoria. And he puts V, and he's thinking, well, you said it was. I think what Frid tells with his face, well, wait, you said it wasn't Victoria. And then when he puts that across the A, it confirms what he already knows. A for Angelique. And it's a great job by both actors. Before we get to the actual wedding from hell, what did you both think of that moment? Susie?
Jewel, I have to say that in probably the whole 1795 arc, that was probably my most favorite scene of all of them. I was so happy when he did that. It was one of those moments where like I jumped off the couch type of moments, like yes, yes, this is awesome. Because how else was he gonna tell him? How else? Because didn't she curse him or put some sort of spell where if he revealed who the witch is, he'd lose his voice or he'd become ill or something?
If he
So
spoke.
right, and so Barnabas telling him to write it was absolutely perfect. It was my absolute favorite scene.
Yeah. Don?
From a writing perspective, I thought it was pure genius.
Yeah.
And how, like, they were probably around the table late at night at 2 o'clock in the morning. How are we going to reveal? How are we going to do this? And just how the first letter in the name Angelique and the first name Victoria, how that worked out. That probably just came to one of the writers in the middle of the night, and it was such great writing. How they revealed it. It's great television. I mean, I'm with Susie. That was one of my favorite moments. And then Jonathan does one of his famous how he could say it, Angelique. And it is after that it is on till dawn.
Yeah.
So the wedding, all that happens after the wedding, but we'll get to the wedding now. So the wedding happens. They say I do. Before we get to the reception, what did you think of the wedding of Angelique and Barnabas? Susie?
Honestly, I thought it was really, really sad.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, that's the first word that I can think of. It was really sad. I mean, Naomi was there, the preacher or whatever, the minister, and then, Ben Stokes is the best man, and that's it. And it was it was so they had to make it like that. I know, because it couldn't have been a nice occasion. It was really it was really sad. Her dress was sad. The look on their faces was sad. I mean, it was a sad moment.
It really was. Dawn.
All that was missing was somebody holding that real shotgun. because it was so forced. And I'm sorry, Joel. It was so forced. And it was so forced, and it was so sad, and it just sealed the fate of that unit of the Collins family. Like that was really the beginning of the end of that unit of the Collins family. Its fate was sealed. There was no going back. And I think it was dark and rainy and thundery outside, and it was pathetic. And Naomi kind of was the only one, I don't say saved it, but you could feel her love, and she respected Angelique. She wanted to support this marriage. This is her son. This is just the way it was going to be, and she was going to make the best of it. But boy, it's the beginning of the end of that storyline.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Jen Bennett's character is the hero of that episode in a lot of ways. She gives them a wedding gift. She blesses the marriage in every way, shape, and form. If she only knew. Here comes our reception. So we've mentioned the whole how he finds out, oh, she's a witch. So Angelique's the witch. Now, for those out there going, well, a reception's a happy moment. Not this one. This one involves a cursed doll and a flintlock pistol, and somebody's going to get their ass shot. And that somebody is Angelique.
And don't forget a bloody bottle of champagne.
Oh,
Talk
Yes.
about cocktail hour. Oh my God.
This is what happens when you get cut off from the college family. They give you the bloody bottle of champagne. No. Uh, but yeah, there's a bloody bottle of champagne. Actually, I believe he tries to kill her twice. Actually, in the whole before he shoots her, he tries to
Yeah.
kill her poison,
right.
and
Poison.
he tries to stab her. And she's like, "You hate me that much." That's where she finds out. She knows he's on to her. He's figured it out, and he's gonna leave. He's just, "I'll just leave you." And she gets, "No, you'll never." And he's like, "I'll stay. I'll give you my word." Which this is where the moment where again, here's her second moment where she effed up before the flintlocks ever fired. He gave you his word once and kept it. Why would he break it now? And he wouldn't. She doesn't want to believe him. This is where she's most evil here, because she's choosing not to believe somebody who's already told her the truth one time. She wouldn't know the truth if it did smack her in the face, Angelique. And so she's stabbing a doll. The doll is Sarah, that Sarah's being basically pinned to death. Jonathan's character Barnabas has two flintlocks. Both are loaded. He only picks up one. This proves that Barnabas is no Solomon Kane for two reasons. Solomon Kane would have picked up both, and Solomon Kane would have aimed for the head and hit. Our buddy Barnabas does not. He hits the shoulder, or as field goal kickers go, wide right, or whatever you want to say, wide left. I guess her left, his right. But what did you guys think of that whole? Before we get to the curse, what did you guys think of that the whole flintlock sequence there, Susie?
Well, I knew that it was coming. I didn't think that he was going to shoot her. And then, I mean, I knew he was going to shoot her. I didn't think he was going to shoot her in the shoulder. And then he could have just kept shooting her. I mean, she was down, but obviously she was still alive. And that's usually what they do. They pick up the gun and shoot again when they're moving, but he didn't. Um, but I, you know, I think I think that the reason why she questions him, how you were talking about this before, is because I kind of think that she one of the reasons why she was so angry is because before, in like a couple of episodes before, when he told her that their affair or whatever was over, he came to her room and she didn't believe him, and then they kiss, and it wasn't like a little tiny kiss and then like, no, this is wrong. I mean, it was like a really passionate kiss. I mean, he kissed her back and then he pushed her away, and so I think that pissed her off, like, more, because it's like, what are you doing to me? You're kind of giving me mixed signals. Like, I feel like I know that you want to be with me. You came to my room, we're alone, you kissed me, and now you're telling me we can't be together. And so I think that was, what pissed her off and made her question him, um, about that. And so that's what I think. But as far as him shooting her, yeah, he should have kept going. Definitely.
Yeah. Dawn?
I just think that it had all built up. I mean, that Angelique had screwed up his potential marriage to Josette. Sarah, the whole, how she was treating Sarah, what she was doing to Ben, what she did to Jeremiah, who was his de facto brother, and he just kind of snapped. And what?
No, I'm not done. That was my son. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And I think I would say snap, but he just, all he probably saw was red, and he says, I just got to get rid of her. I don't care what it takes. What do I have to do? I've got to save what's left of my family. I got to kill her. But dude, you are a lousy ass shot.
Yeah, Susie make you both make great points, and Susie made some with a flintlock. He'd have to reload the first pistol. Now there's a second one he could just pick up and fire and shoot her in
Right.
the head, and he doesn't. And then come her words, "I put a curse on you." I think again with her, Susie's right. You can't go into a woman's. This is basically all of this whole angle is a jealous lover's revenge. Whether they mean to come across that or not with DS, I don't know, but that's what it is. Here's Angelique. She's jealous of Josette and Barnabas. She doesn't want them to get married. She wants to get married to Barnabas. And once she has her wedding, what really starts to happen to her is this. Diablos is pissed that she got married because what's a wedding? It's a symbol of God. If you are a witch, you do not piss Satan off by getting married and basically putting half of your allegiance to God, because Satan's gonna be like, oh really? Oh really? Watch this.
That is so true.
And then you get Jeremiah, who's thrown Angelique in a grave and buried her. Then she's got to summon Ben. Oh, you escaped with that? Well, watch this. I'll have you kick Victoria out the house without you even realize you're doing it. And then you'll F up and he'll hear you. And then things are going to get really rolling, honey. This is all Diablos' master plan to get revenge at Angelique. And as much as I want to feel sorry for Angelique, she did it to herself.
Well, yeah.
Well, I can't prove all this, but in many ways, it's somewhat makes sense to me, because again, she's a witch. She's because I think Angelique gave her loyalty to Diablos to protect her from Judah Zachary. Okay, I'll give you my protection, but if you cross me, gloves are off. And well, in a sense, his rules are simple: stay away from church, stay away from God, stay away from Jesus, and they're all three the same fucking people. To Satan anyway. and and so she didn't, she saw Barnabas. Oh, I'm in love, because they had sex in Martinique. They got it on like Donkey Kong, as they say. And listen, my wife, when she watched Dark Shadows, she's watching it with me. She watched it when she had watched it for the first time. She sees Laura Parker's Angelique come in and to talk to Barnabas, and she goes, "Well, they fucked." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Barnabas and Angelique, they had sex." And I was like, "How did you know that?" And she's like, "Body language." She says, "You can tell they've been together in the bed." I'm like, "Women." It's like, I'm like, okay. And she's right. She was right. Thank you, Julie. I know you're at work, so you won't be able to watch this until later. But, but, but she's right. And I think that it's a really cool. I love how they shoot the whole wedding, the post-wedding sequence, the gunshot sequence. It's really well shot and well acted by Laura Parker and Jonathan Frakes. What did you folks think, Susie?
of of how it was shot.
Yes, of how I'm sorry, I mean not shot, but how they did the camera work. Sorry.
Oh no, I thought it was really good. I did. I liked that it took place in the old house, not, outside somewhere. Um, that it happened there. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, Don.
I thought it was done really well. It wasn't. I don't think it was an easy scene to video or to shoot it. Um, how they because there's a lot going on, and how are they going to be making it really effective? And they only got. I keep using the pun, but they only had one shot at it, and it didn't get messed up. There was no blooper on that.
Yeah.
And I got to give them a lot of credit. And from a more of a global standpoint, Jewel, it really cemented the future of that room
Yeah.
being so important to the rest of the series because it, I mean, for the entire series, because I think you and Patrick had said it at one point where we get further into the series, and that room actually became a house, became a haven for what was going on in the Great House, and where Julia would be there with Barnabas, and sometimes Professor Stokes plotting because it was what we're call the kids now call a safe space, at least temporarily. So there was a lot. It was a great shot, but it was also setting up a lot further down the road. I thought it was really well done for the time. No CGI, no special. It just
Yeah.
was what it was.
Yeah, it's CGI has spoiled a lot of things. And I think there's things you get with the practical effects of the 60s that you can't get with today's effects. And really, you get more importantly, you get the acting to go with it too, because you have great writing and great actors and actresses. You're both right. First of all, to my guests who have made great points tonight, both of you. Um, this here, the room, what it once represents is a marriage that happened that whether you can debate from the fan standpoint should or shouldn't have happened, but it does happen. And then the flintlock goes off because Barnabas shoots her. She curses him, and then he die. He doesn't die. What's interesting most about the drawing room most is there's a lot of blood on the floor from both of them to a degree. There's some blood on her shoulder. There's blood on the floor from his neck, but he doesn't die in that room. And I think that's one of the most interesting aspects of the drawing room of the old house. He actually dies in their bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like the place where they were laid in bed together. He dies, which I think in many ways is symbolic of the Diablos effect. Where see what I did here? Yeah, you're in trouble now. Because what's her curse? Anybody who loves you or you love. Well, she loves his ass. Oh, wait. she realizes this. I love how he points this out. Oh, your curse come to backfire on you as he's choking her like that. But it's like
Jewel, I have to interrupt. I am so dumb. I I watched these episodes so many times, and it didn't even what you just said. It was like it didn't even occur to me. Oh yeah, she loved him too.
she does.
And the curse backfired on her. Oh my god.
Well, she's left in this. That's the thing. You brought up
Oh
a great
my
point.
god.
You brought up the great point of him kissing, like him kissing her back. He sending her mixed signals. Well, she does love him even before she marries his hapless ass.
I know. Oh my god. I
And
can
then she
feel the blood
cursed.
rush to my face.
That's a
I
great.
didn't even
Yeah,
it
that's
didn't
a
even
great.
occur to me.
Well, and Jewel, when she cursed him, she thought she was going to die because didn't she pass out and then she woke up and then they take him upstairs and says, "Okay, Barnabas, you can't die, you can't die." It's like, girl, what did you just do? What?
Yeah. Angelique and
Oh yeah.
Ben Stokes do that, or because Ben Stokes like, "What did you do? What did you do?" And he's like, he can't die. Like she's covered when the draws are like drawn up and like so it's blocking the sunlight. Then she
Yeah,
reveals the sunlight. He screams
yeah,
like he's like, oh my god. He's like, if he dies, he will rise. Like she knows what's coming. She knows this. She realizes the spell she put on him, and she's trying to prevent his death. And really, at this point, she's not so much trying to prevent his death because she knows what's coming for her at this point. She's trying to prevent his death because she doesn't honestly want him to die now. Because she does realize, again, this is not her, count him, this is her fourth mistake. Now, it's not going to be her last one ever, but this is her fourth mistake. And it's the death of Barnabas Collins. And then when she goes to stake him, he's like choking her like this. And by the way, kids, no, he's not choking her. This isn't rough sex. No, this is just he's choking her. Okay, he's just choking
oh
her.
my
Uh,
God.
give me 1 second, guys. I got to get a drink for my son. Go ahead.
Of
Sure.
course, of course. Oh my gosh.
Buddy, hold
Oh, Don, I can't even believe it. What he said, it didn't even occur to me.
It never occurred to me until you said it. So that's
Oh,
wow.
God. I mean, you know, I watch this show, you know, on the weekends, and you know, sometimes like I always say, Jewel asks like the hardest questions because sometimes I'll watch it, I don't even think about certain things, you know, but holy smokes.
Well,
Things that I learned.
at
There's so
some
much
point,
to learn.
well, and at some point I'm going to watch it all over again. You know, when I get done with all the books and everything, I'll probably have a pause, and then I'll watch it again, and I'm sure I'll pick up a whole bunch of stuff I'd never obviously didn't pick up the first time, or in some cases the third time, because I did see a portion of it when it originally aired, but that was through the eyes of a kid.
Well, I have to tell you, you know, I'm still reading the Patrick's Dark Shadows daybook. In the daybook, he does this thing where he lists the episodes kind of like by time.
Yeah, that's the very
So
famous.
I think
Yeah,
I want to do that.
yeah. You should. Everybody that said they've done that, it's like they see the show in a whole different way. So yeah, you should.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna do that.
Both books are really, really great. The Dark Shadows Daybook and the Dark Shadows Daybook about, for those who don't know what we're talking about, which I think Susie and Don both mentioned. I tried to listen as I was away. So
you didn't say too much.
So sorry.
We're talking about trying or wanting to rewatch the whole thing again, and I brought up because I'm reading the daybook, the first one, and how he lists the episodes like from time periods. And when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, I want to do that. I want to watch them this way. So I bookmarked that page so that I'll do it.
Like if you want to start, if you want to start with 1795 first, go episode 363, which is it's right before it's before the seance. Then the seance comes a couple episodes later, like I think 2 or 3. And then they had the seance, they go back. And there's 1795. So this is an origin story that really, really hits home. And it makes all the sense in the world the way they do it. As much joking around as we've done, I love how with this whole episode too, that with the marriage of Angelique and Barnabas, it builds to the marriage. It builds like the whole 1795 arc isn't just about Barnabas being cursed. You literally find out how one woman slowly deceived an entire family.
Yes.
Slowly deceived the man who she would ultimately marry. And as much as she, complains about Barnabas betraying her, giving her mixed signals in many ways, she betrayed him too, because she betrayed herself by using magic and doing things that were, not good. Again, putting a curse on somebody, and again, a lot of the decisions that get made by Angelique, you could make the case they're signs of immaturity. It's just an image, a witch who acts on, impulse and immaturity, and it's a sign of a young character who makes these decisions that are horrible. I mean, the one thing is the most heartbreaking two deaths are Sarah and Naomi, and it's like, my God, and like you just shake your head at Angelique at that point. Because once she comes back to during the trial, and it's like, girl, just Barnabas, go get the flintlock and do it right this time. but it's so criminally good what they do with this whole arc, and what they do with how they set up the marriage, how they set up all the betrayal. I mean, initially, and Angelique says this too. She says, Josette never wanted any. All the men wanted Josette. She says this, Angelique does, but she would not have them. She wouldn't have them. So she does the opposite. She will see how it feels as she wants Jeremiah. And when she comes to Jeremiah's room and kisses him, he's like, "What are you doing? You're going to marry Barnabas." And she runs away like, what did I do? Not realize he's all confused. You just kissed a man who doesn't want to get married, honey. What did you think of the spell casting of Angelique? I love how the way they wrote a lot of the spells. So what did you both think of it? Susie?
Well, kind of going back with what you said about her and how, how she did all these things. And you used a word, what was it? You said that you said something like it, like she was making kind of like rookie mistakes. I also think that maybe she was kind of acting this way or making these mistakes because she was also in love, and love makes you do kind of like really crazy things. And so I think that was also like a big part of it. But I thought that her spell casting was very interesting, especially the voodoo dolls or the dolls. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting and very evil.
Oh, sorry. Don?
I'll say it again. I have my degree in drama, so I look at a lot of this stuff as a perspective from an actor or actress. Laura Parker, her focus and her eyes, she's looking at fire, is so focused and so intense. And I don't know where the writers came up with these incantations, but they are scary as shit. And how nothing crazy happened on that set, I don't know, because it is so believable. But I'll say it again. We've all said it on your broadcast, on your podcast, Joel. Robert Colbert's music is, without that music, it was so, because he uses that when she's doing an incantation, that theme that he has, that cue music, is just so good and so scary. Like, you really believe this shit is happening, and don't mess with her. But her spells are intense, and kudos to Laura Parker for just being so fantastic at it. And I'm going to give her another shout out because I'm getting through the big Finnish productions, and here's this woman doing it 40 years later, and she's not missing a beat, and she's in that character, and she is just freaking amazing. And I got to do another shout out. I've heard the audio version of the shorter version of Angelique's Descent, and her writing the whole backstory with her and Barnabas and her growing up on Martinique. She's just an amazing human being.
Yeah, I've read 2 of her books. I've read what is it? Heiress of Collinwood and this Dark Shadows of Salem Bridge. Both are great books. I have not read Angelique's Descent yet. I gotta pick that up and read it.
It's intense, and you got to get the CDs because you can't download them from Britain because she acts almost all the characters in the audiobook version.
Yeah, and
I'm just kind of speechless when it comes to Laura Parker. That's how much I admire her.
They should have when they were doing the 2012 movie, they should have ripped up the script, handed her a sheet of paper. You write the movie.
Exactly. Or either let her write the movie, or we're gonna cast a spell on all you people. Sorry, I'm very passionate about that. That's a great point, Joel.
That's what's weird about it too, because some of the not big parts, but some of the movie is taken from her book, Dark Shadows of Salem Bridge. Like, when you read the book, it says this movie inspired the 2012 movie, which more, it's like, don't give movie that privilege, because it doesn't deserve it, for one. It doesn't, because the book is really well written and well versed, and the movie's not. And it's like, why on God's green earth did you not just have Laura Parker write this movie? At least the movie would have been 1,000 times better than what you pulled off. And I don't know why they didn't think about her writing the movie. She could have did it. And, now would she have wanted to? I'd like to think yes. Again, I'm not her. I'm not trying to answer for her. I want to make that very clear. This is just me giving my opinion. So it would have been really nice to see. But is there anything either of you want to add about Barnabas and Angelique's wedding from hell?
Susie?
Do I want to add anything about it? I don't think so. Well, actually, yes. That whole storyline with the two of them, everything that she did. I mean, you almost forget that Victoria Winters is like, like on trial for her life. I mean, it's almost like when I look back on that storyline, that's what comes to mind for me is not even Victoria being back there and her having the book, which is so important. It's everything that Angelique did, everything that she put that family through is like, that's what I think of.
Dawn?
I think Susie makes a good point, and I think you and Patrick have talked about it before. It shows that the show is pivoting away from Victoria Winters being the central character to this show's going to go down another road, different new road. It's going to be Barnabas and Angelique and consequences, which is another word you guys have used. And this is the beginning of that. Yeah, Victoria's going to have her big scene hanging, and Patrick and I have talked about this off air. One of my favorite episodes is 461. It was when they came back to 1968. But this is kind of like the show just starting to pivot away from Victoria. And just a quick little sidebar, I am so anticipating the episode where we have you guys talk about Parallel Time 1841, the flashback episode. It's like I'm waiting for Christmas. I'm waiting to open my presents. So hurry up and get to that episode so I can open up my presents. I just have to throw that in there.
Yeah, I think we're 2 episodes away. So it's. I initially started doing the videos by myself, and Patrick's like, "Hey, can I do it with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, dude. You didn't have to ask."
I gotta do a mention. It was just on Twitter. It was just announced the woman that designed all those costumes for Parallel Time 1841, and I'm sorry I don't have her name written down. She just passed away this week.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Great costumes. We talked about how Melanie, Nancy Barrett is so skinny, and Patrick's like, I don't he couldn't figure out why do you think that is? I said, I think because Nancy Barrett's playing a character who's supposed to be the youngest of all the kids. And I said, I know that sounds weird to make her skinny, but sometimes being thin makes you look younger.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. I'm fat.
Jewel. You are so bad.
I'm too much. No, but it really, I think that's the reason they make Nancy Barrett very skinny, because this is the thinnest she's just she looks very thin.
She looks really thin.
The skin, the dress is tight against her skin.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cringe to look at. Once you get past the first time seeing it, it's like, oh my God, holy shit. And then you get past it because she's acting her ass off.
Oh,
I mean, in that arc, she's really amazing. The whole cast is amazing. We only see sure, we only see James Storman, I think, in 2 episodes.
Yeah.
It's not much. I want to say 3, but because they use Carrie Stokes as a medium, which again, Kathy Cody really steals some episodes.
Oh, she's great. I know we're a little off topic, but I've been listening to everyone, and it's like, yes, Kathy Cody. And I love how Patrick does Kathy Cody on her first scene. Who are you? I mean, he has her voice down to where she is, as the medium, and the woman's getting dug up in the Joel. I mean, Kathy Cody really came into her own on that whole arc.
Yeah, me and Patrick had talked about this. You sort of wish they would have introduced her this way, as opposed to the way they introduced her in the, when Barnabas and Julia come back. It's just like, again, she was somebody fresh, she was somebody new, so she had to learn. Again, the high, when you speak loud, again, we've talked about this with Keith Prentice. Like
poor Keith. I love him. I love
the boom mic. The boom mic is like right there. So Keith, who doesn't want it lowered, is shouting to the top of his lungs.
He's a stage actor.
And Kathy Cody sort of does the same thing when she says, "Who are you?" It's like it's so loud. It's like, who are you? Why are you shouting? Well, like they're like literally they're right there in front of her.
Right there in Grayson Hall's face. She's in Grayson Hall's face.
It's like this is all. And again, I love Dark Shadows, but I mean the boom mic's right there, so she probably felt I have to shout, because she probably didn't want the boom mic lowered where it was in their shot, which makes sense when you think about it. It's not really any one person's fault. It's just again, Dark Shadows was filmed in a different time and things were done differently back then. So you appreciate it for what it is. I mean, I give Kathy Cody a lot of credit because here with 1841, my God, she steals some episodes that are just, again, it's fabulous to go back through 1841 and really give it its due diligence. It deserves it for sure, simply because they were trying something that, again, I love Victoria Winter. She's still my favorite character, but Victoria had no real payoff though at the end of the day. As much as I hate to say that, I'm going to burn in hell. But with this, Melanie has a payoff. Every character gets a payoff, and that's important. Even Daphne. You might think Daphne's death is sort of senseless. Some people might think that, but I view it as this way. That's who gets their name drawn to go into the room? Catherine. Well, what's Catherine's punishment for not going to the room? The room kills her sister. And now I know Daphne never goes into the room, but Daphne is around everybody who has the plague. So Catherine's punishment is her sister's death.
It's a great point, Joel. I remember.
You know what I mean? The room. We don't know the full. The room is so powerful, or I should say, Brutus Collins is so powerful as a ghost. Who the hell knows what he can do? Oh. So, it's a great. Again, Kate Jackson did a great job. Everybody in 1841 did a fabulous job. My favorite character so far has been Morgan. I think Keith Prentice really, really sold his ass off, and Keith Prentice's James Forsythe is superb.
I don't want to spoil he that pivot you were talking about in the previous, a broadcast. You're right. He's a completely different character, and you're feeling it when he finds his sister. I mean, this is getting pretty raw. I mean, I watched that as a 7-year-old kid, but seeing it as an adult, I think it's affecting me even more because you feeling is, Joel, it is something else.
I don't know if they were thinking about Keith Prentice playing Barnabas or not, but if you want proof that Keith Prentice could have played Barnabas, watch that episode. The proof is there in that episode where he's sort of find his sister's body and he's calling out the ghost of Brutus Collins. It's so criminally underrated, it's not even funny. But again, great acting. Keith Prentice, David Selby were going to be their stars. They were their future. Unfortunately, Dark Shadows got canceled, and we never got to see what that would look like.
I was so mad when I found out and read that in TV. I actually have said that the last broadcast, when that show ended, that's when my early childhood ended. It really did. Because, well, Bewitched was going to go off the air the next year, and that was that whole, all the television that I remembered. And it was really the last vestige of, I would say, fantasy television, or, you know, just that kind of TV where you had all those Irwin Allen shows, you had Dark Shadows, you had Bewitched, you had I Dream of Jeannie, and it was really ending. It was, and then you got into a whole different kind of television in the 70s, but that's a whole Will McKinley discussion that I don't want to digress too much. But I really, when I look back, and we've had these discussions, Joel, that really was the day that my early childhood ended, and I'm yeah.
Yeah. See, my childhood ended immediately when my parents were like, wrestling's fake.
Oh,
Like, huh? Like, see, because like in the late 80s, early, like when I started watching wrestling, like it was like the late 80s. Hulk Hogan was still big, and like he was not my favorite wrestler. Macho Man Randy Savage was. And so I would climb like my parents' bed, and I would do the elbow drop on the pillow on the floor. So my mother walks in, she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Mom, I'm the Macho Man Randy Savage," and I did, "Ooh yeah," you know. And my mom's like, "Honey, wrestling's fake." I'm like, "What?" That's what my childhood ended right there. When my mom said wrestling was fake, and she's right, it was.
That's
It
pretty
is.
devastating.
Oh man.
It is. But the good thing is I still watched wrestling and I was entertained by it for years and years until 2000 came, and then that shit all hit the wall. But things you grow out of certain things, and I think wrestling was one of mine. But I enjoyed it when I watched it. It was a lot of fun. I remember watching Ric Flair in the old NWA, and then when he went to WCW, and Flair could dress up like a woman. Like he would disguise himself as women because he had this long golden blonde hair. Funny story. One of Ric Flair's theme songs was the song "Easy Lover" by Genesis, which is funny. And funny thing too, Hulk Hogan's theme "Real American" wasn't actually written for him at all. It was actually just a song that the band wrote to put on an album. And WWE said, "Well, will you put it on our album too?" "Yeah, if you pay us." And they did, because hey, why not have your music everywhere? And Vince McMahon heard it and goes, "That could be Hulk Hogan's theme," and that's what it became. That's crazy. See that shit like that. When I hear behind the scenes stuff like that, that shit's crazy to me. It's like, because when I hear Real American, oh, that had to be intended for Hulk Hogan. No, I don't. No, it wasn't. And I'm like, oh, really? Who knew? You know. So I always try to learn something new about wrestling that I didn't know. And it's like I've heard everything so much, like, because there's things that, like, the behind the scenes stuff you did not know as a kid. Like you weren't like invested in like what went on behind the scenes until, I would say, to me, the Montreal Screwjob, when Bret Hart, when they rang the bell on Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels won the title. When that happened, then it was like, okay, what's going on behind the scenes now? And once that happened, I think you realize, oh, this is how wrestling can really work. Because you have somebody who refuses to drop a title, which, Vince McMahon did not want Bret Hart to leave with the title to go to WCW. So he had the guy ring the bell, and Shawn Michaels won the belt because Shawn Michaels had Bret Hart in his own move. And that's when things turned really interesting with wrestling too, because it was a lot of things was the birth. There were a lot of things that led to the birth of the Attitude Era, which was amazing. I know I'm rambling about wrestling.
It's fine.
Susie, Dawn, it has been a blast. This has been fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
No, thank you guys both for coming on. This is a lot of fun. What's a topic you both want to discuss?
We know, don't we, Dawn?
Yeah, go ahead, Sue. We do have one.
It was your idea. You said.
Was it? Somewhere down the line, we'd like to talk about. I don't think it was. Was it episodes or moments or favorite episodes?
It was Yeah, favorite episodes.
And favorite, I like our top 5 favorite episodes
Ooh.
Yeah.
of the
How
whole 5-year run.
I like that. How's next Friday? We good or we need?
Let me check real
I
quick.
might have some plans, but it's nothing's confirmed.
Okay, let me.
Okay, well,
But I'll let you know.
yeah. If we need, if it can't be this Friday, we can always do it next week. You know, no big deal. You both know that. Just let me know, and then we'll get together at our usual time. Is that good?
Perfect.
Yeah, it might be. If not next week, I'd be available either next Friday or the Friday, either the 5th or the 12th. I'd be available.
So how about we shoot for the 5th?
Okay.
And that way that way in case everybody has plans, because I know you guys are busy. I'm busy.
No, I'm not, Jewel.
Well, listen.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
But phones ringing at Susie's house. I'm on a Dark Shadows podcast. It doesn't matter.
Well, yeah. Somebody was trying to call me. It's like, dude, don't call me now. I'm on Joel's show. Everything stops.
I shit you not. Like one time when I was doing like when I do videos by myself, I was literally getting ready to record, and a friend of mine called me. I'm like, "What do you want?" I'm getting ready to do podcast. What do you want? And I know the guy for years. He's like, "Hey," motherfucker. I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" It's like you know your friends love you when they say, "Hey, motherfucker." Jesus Christ. He comes up to my house the next day, like, what the fuck? What are you doing? What were you doing last night? I said, a podcast, because he's off on the weekends. I'm like, a podcast. He said, about what? I said about Dark Shadows. He goes, don't you ever quit talking about that show? I said, no, don't you? Do you ever quit talking about comic books? No, motherfucker, you don't. So no. Crazy friends. Again, both thank you so much for coming on and talking about this with me. This was a lot of fun, Dawn and Susie. Go follow them on Twitter at Donald Schmidt, at Mayfair, I think it is.
Yes.
Okay, I got it right. I barely get Twitter handles right, let alone my own. So again, thank you both. You both have a great night and enjoy your weekends.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
Take care, Susie.
All
Take
right,
care.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.